Yeah, I would not blame you. Now use our promo code. Anyway, we are
Yeah.
coming to you after the Kings lost on the road. Their first road loss of the year comes in Dallas. They fall 105 to 99. They are now 3-3 on the season. And it was just an ugly game, I think. I mean, you think about the start, Morgan. There's something about these early games that just bug me in general, and I get why the NBA wants to do it because they want more of their games seen by an international audience, and Luka obviously has a massive following because he's a stud and he's one of the premier players in the game. They want to make sure people all over the world are awake to see his game. So I get it. I just think sometimes it leads to ugly basketball, and it felt like just both teams were kind of out of sync at times, but the Kings came out really out of sync, down 17-3 early, and then they had to grind their way back into it. Finally took the lead in the third quarter, but I think it comes down to this. The Kings just aren't shooting well enough, and their best player, De'Aaron Fox, is not playing to the level that he needs to play at. Like, if they're going to be a playoff team, which is the goal, right? Like, he has to play better, and I don't know why he's not right now. I'm searching for answers as to why he's not playing to the level we saw last year, but he's clearly not. And it's 6 games in. You have to have perspective, but he's not at the level he needs to be.
No. And I want you to also say that stat that you had put out on Twitter, because I really liked just where he is scoring under. Not, I don't like it, but like just that pointing out kind of where he is the season, scoring, having so many games, scoring under 20 points this season and how many he had last season.
I also
And
said it on TV too, Morgan, and I can give you the stat if you'd like. I
yeah,
looked it up. So last year, De'Aaron had 12 games where he had 20 or fewer points. 12 games in 72 games where he had fewer than 20 points. The Kings were 2-10 in those games. We are 6 games in.
Yeah.
He already has 4 games under 20, and the Kings are 1-3. And look, I had someone on Twitter ask, well, what's their record when he scores over 20? Here's what I do know. I don't know that off the top of my head. I was looking under 21, and I'll tell you this. It just puts it out there that, like, he has to be good for them to have a chance. And right now, he has not been efficient. The shooting numbers just are really bad, and that's like been the biggest question hanging over him throughout his NBA career is, can he be a decent shooter? And this year, there's something off, and I don't know what it is. Like, we've speculated, could he be banged up? Could it be this? Could it be that? I don't know. Could it be the muscles? I don't know. But it's clear he's not 100% to the level we've seen in the past. He felt like a little more explosive today, but then that lineup at the end of the third quarter where he was out there with the 4 guards and Tristan Thompson, he looked like he was gassed. And
and that's the thing, Deuce. It's you look at just the way that he's looked, the eye test. Don't look at just the stat lines, right? You look at what you're seeing from him. And obviously our expectations for De'Aaron Fox being in Sacramento, they are going to be high.
They have to. He's a max player.
That's the other thing I was going to add in there too. Like, people, if you want to factor in the contract, sure, be one of those people, factor in the contract. And that's just the truth. Like, that's part of the things that we judge guys on, the expectations we have when money is given. Absolutely. And he's just not being that star player that we have seen on a consistent basis. So how does he find that consistency? And that's what I was kind of asking Matt about. Like, is this something we're going to talk about a lot where we go, okay, so is this next game going to be his rebound game? Like, we've had this conversation already this season and it's early on. Okay, is it going to be a bounce back game for De'Aaron Fox? And each game, he has that pressure on himself and he just needs to now execute that, right? And like be that star player that this Kings team needs to see, because he has a better roster this year. An efficient player and leader in Harrison Barnes, a playmaker in Tyrese Haliburton, a nice backup from Davion Mitchell, Buddy Hield coming off the bench and, was having better numbers, obviously not the greatest today, but still there's other things. Tristan Thompson, that spark of energy. There's things on this roster that's like, come on, De'Aaron, you're giving more. Now take it to the next level.
Yeah.
I just think it's going to be one of those things that we do talk about a lot. He is in his 5th year, different expectations too, being in his 5th year in this league. And I don't know what to say. But I do think it's ridiculous too when you are going to hear a lot of De'Aaron Fox hate because that's just what
For
fans
sure.
do.
And
It's
look,
fandom. It's extreme.
yeah, I mean, I don't mind, like, the criticism is completely fair. Like, I'm sorry, like,
Absolutely.
when you lose and your best player is not playing at the level that he needs to play, like, there's going to be questions asked, and like, it's totally fair. He was 5 of 16 in this game. He had 14 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 turnovers. But I'm just sitting here going, it's hard for me to pinpoint, like, well, what is going on with him? I mentioned him looking gassed at the end of the third quarter. And he had played 30 minutes up to that point, which, through 3 quarters is pretty heavy. But, you got to be able to, you may need to be prepared to play that many minutes, especially as the guy. He played
Yeah.
just under 40 minutes tonight. And, he's not the only guy around the league that's struggling. And I wonder how much this has to do with some of the new rules in the NBA. Again, sample size, but Stat News put something out. I'll put it on the screen now. The NBA so far this season, the fewest free throws per game ever. The lowest field goal percentage since 2003. The lowest 3-point percentage since 2000, and the lowest offensive rating since 2014. So that's the whole league we're talking about. And they also included like some of the top scores from last year, where Steph was averaging 32 a game down to 28. Beal from 31 to 24. Dame is averaging 19 after averaging 28.8 last year. I'm going to keep going here because these numbers are interesting. You got Joel Embiid at 28.5. Last year, he's at 21. Luka goes from 27 to 22. I'll skip ahead a little bit here because Booker was at 25 to 22. Trae Young from 25 to 22. And then you've got Fox, who's on the list too, who is at 25.2. And now, going into today's game, he was at 19.4. So this is like, I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. I feel like the NBA product this season has looked a lot better overall. I think it's more free-flowing. You're not getting all these garbage calls. So you look at Fox's struggles, and you see there's other players who are like star guys around the league struggling, and you're going, okay, is there something to this, or is it just like some of these guys are just off to weird starts? I don't know.
Yeah, I think some people feel like, oh, these rules are that adjustment, like guys are getting it's weird too because you're seeing some plays where guys are getting swiped or it's an over the back and they're not calling it and you're like, okay, that's pretty physical. And then there's a few times tonight even when someone like Davion, I think, like brushed the arm of Luka or someone going to the basket and they ended up calling a foul, and it's like, okay, so they're still trying to get the rhythm of what to call and what not to call physical in this league. So I get it when there's rule changes, like there's going to be a different style of play from certain
Yeah,
guys. Like,
but Morgan, these numbers around the league are staggering. Like to
yes.
have the lowest field goal percentage and 3-point like it was jaw dropping when I like literally. Yeah, that sounds so cliche. I was jaw dropping. I saw those and my jaw went straight to the ground, dude. I'm so stupid.
You are sometimes. I love it. I love that you admit that because you
So,
are.
but like some of those guys I listed, you think about their ability to get to the free throw line, right? Like these guys they're used to taking a lot of free throws. Fox is one of those, right? And now maybe he's not getting the same calls. It makes a difference, but, and this is not to excuse Fox, like it's not to excuse any players. Like you do have to your point, you have to adjust and you got to figure it out.
Yes.
I want to talk more about this game because there's other things besides Fox here.
Okay.
The perspective that I saw someone put out on social media about this game specifically, you had Barnes, who was 5 of 16, not good. Haliburton, 5 of 14. Fox was 5 for 16. Buddy, 4 for 13. And you were in the game.
Yeah.
They're 3-3. Is that encouraging?
So that's the thing. That's why even when we were getting into these first thoughts, it was interesting to me when you're like, oh man, ugly ass game. And I'm like, well, sucky game. And the reason why there's a difference to me, because last year there's so many ugly games that we came on after, and it's like, that's not even fun to talk about. Where this game, I felt like there was still that competitive play, but shots weren't falling, right? Like and not only were shots not falling, they weren't taking the right shots all the time. They weren't making the best decisions. Okay, our shots aren't falling. What do we need to do? Well, we do know that the Dallas Mavericks have the tallest NBA roster in the NBA. And so they have a big squad. Like you look at Luka. I mean, I saw Luka when he was on Tristan Thompson. It was like they were the same size, and you see what he can do. But a lot of their defense, they're long, they're there, and obviously they don't have everything together, but that can still disrupt games. And then they're coming off that game that they only scored 75 points. They had a different mentality going into this game. But if you're the Sacramento Kings, like you have to step up and be ready. And also carry that momentum from that last win that you had into this game as well. When shots aren't falling, you just have to change it up.
Yeah, the Mavs played some pretty good defense down the stretch of this game too, I thought. And you look at their games this season, Morgan, they had been last in the NBA in first quarter scoring at like 20 a game. Their field goal percentage last in the first quarter. They come out of this game and it was like easy for them. They had 22 points at the 5:48 mark. They were up 22-9. Now the Kings closed better. The Kings went to that weird 4-guard lineup. The first stint looked pretty good because Thompson gave them a spark. I thought his energy, his presence, that's one thing I got to give love to Tristan. That guy has stayed engaged. And that's not easy to do when you are literally the guy that's in and out of the lineup. It's like he and Len are kind of switching off like stints depending on matchups.
Yes.
Thompson got the call tonight. He plays 21 minutes, had 13 points. He had 5 rebounds and 5 of 7 shooting. But that lineup kind of got him back into the game to make it reasonable going into the second quarter. So it was a slow start. And then you're just not making shots. And we could say it's as easy as just not making shots, but I got to be honest, the one thing that's been glaring to me watching this team through 6 games is the half-court offense. Like, it's just not good enough.
Yes.
There's not a lot of movement. It's too stagnant, and cleaning the glass had some interesting stats.
Ooh.
The Kings' offensive rating in the half-court is 19th, which kind of surprised me because I thought it was worse.
Okay.
But 19th is not great, and today it was dreadful. And then their transition offense is 9th. Then you go when they actually force turnovers, they're 2nd in the league. So, this team's strength is clearly getting out in transition, and that obviously helps when you're getting stops or the team's missing. But when they're in the half court, it's sluggish.
They only had 1 fast break point. Is that correct? That's what I saw on our
yes.
stats. Yeah. So 1 fast break point, and you look at them in that half court offense, and they are stagnant. And guess what? That's not part of their identity. That is not part of what they are good at. So if that is not part of what you are good at, what makes your offense good? Your defense. We've talked about this whole time. Now, every single night or every single team you play against, it's not like you're just going to get a whole bunch of stops. Sometimes there's going to be nights where shitty team's on fire, or there's going to be nights that you're just playing a really good team that is dominating you. So your defense is going to look bad. You're not going to get a lot of stops. But that should be your pride and joy every single game, because I think you truly have to understand, like, wow, this is what generates these points to go on the score.
Yeah.
Like, this is what makes things sexy. Like, offense is sexy. How do we get our offense? By our defense. And that is part of their identity. Now, as they grow as a squad, though, Deuce, yes, that is something they need to figure out, because there's going to be nights like this where you're just not getting those stops. Luka is playmaking and the team is bigger, and they're just and they were making these buckets on the Kings. So I think that's something that's going to come over time, but stick to what you're great at and just be all up in guys' grills. And you're seeing that when times are coming toward the end and they're like, oh crap, we're down by 10. Now we need to get our hands up, double Luka here and everything. That needs to be the mentality from the minute the game starts till the end.
Yeah, they had that one sequence in the second quarter when they were really trying to make a little bit of a push, and Mitchell is on Luka, and Davion Mitchell just makes plays. He had a couple tonight. He had one off a Kings turnover where he got back and forced a jump ball on Brunson. Just beautiful defense. And then Luka's trying to post him up. And again, Mitchell's strength knocks the ball away. They're trying to swing it around, and the Kings defense was engaged and forced a 24-second violation. That was the type of engagement that we really didn't see at all last year. So there's definitely encouraging signs defensively. I think one other point I'd like to make is about Richaun Holmes, Morgan.
Yeah.
This team may not have a win if they didn't re-sign Richaun Holmes. Like, he has been damn good this year. And
we said this last year too.
Yeah, I mean, and today he had 22 points, 13 rebounds, 9 of 15 shooting, a couple of stats to throw out there. He's averaging a career high in points, rebounds, and blocks. He also is number 1 in the NBA in screen assists per game. And so he's doing a little bit of everything out there. He's playing with energy. I thought he really kept the Kings in it in this game, even though it felt like it was kind of falling apart. That was good to see. I think he's been great. And I look at the prospect that the Kings could have lost him and they brought him back at a bargain. He's essential to what they do. He does so many good things out there, and he's a big reason why they're productive. And now you need the other guys to step up. Fox has to be better. Buddy, we've given him a lot of love at times this year because he's bought into the role off the bench. And I know there are going to be games where you miss shots. We know this. But Buddy's first points did not come until the fourth quarter. The fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And that kills you. The Kings at the half were 2 of 16 from 3. They end up getting it going a little bit at the end, knocking down some threes. Hell, Richaun Holmes hit that 3 at the buzzer. But they finished 7 of 36 from 3. And in today's league, you're not going to win games like shooting that poorly from 3. You're just not. So if you're shooting that poorly, you better be doing some other things, forcing some turnovers, getting it done. It was just killer. And
that's what good teams do too, Deuce. They figure it out. When we're not doing something well, what else can we do well? Right? Like, you can depend on your effort and your energy and your physicality without even having like putting all this skill into it. Night in, night out. Like, that is something that you can carry into every single game. And that's what I just hope that the Kings look at a game like tonight and go, okay, in those moments when everyone was shitty, nothing was going well, what could we have done better? And that's like even more active hands, more up in Luka's grill, making sure that his vision, he can't see the whole floor. And not to say they didn't have good defensive moments, but even rotations. And then in that pick and roll, oh my God, sorry. And then I'll get to the good of Holmes because that's where you're going. But even in their defensive, defending the pick and roll, you're just seeing a lot of like the guard not getting over the pick fast enough. So the big is stunting the guard, but then rolling back. Sometimes they roll back too early because they're afraid of their man going on the roll to the basket, which just allows like a mid-range shot or the ability for someone to have like a nice little floater. And like, you just have to really, truly understand your personnel. And especially when it is someone like Luka, like that decision is going to be made quicker. So those things need to be picked up. Sure, on the defensive end, we'll talk more about that. But with Holmes, you're exactly right, Deuce. Having a player that you can depend on night in, night out. We talked about that with Harrison, like you get that solid game. But having a bigger guy like Richaun Holmes that I feel like sometimes is just always, he's always composed, but it always be that guy that is down to be hyped and be that energy guy when need be. But he's also there in that mid-range game, in that paint with that push shot, where sometimes it just becomes like a secret weapon for this squad. And I do think that they need to utilize it even more.
Well, Morgan, Tyrese Haliburton tonight was 5 of 14, 14.6 rebounds, 4 assists. Someone in the chat was just mentioning that he still feels like he's being a bit hesitant from 3. Did you sense that at all?
I thought tonight, didn't he do a little better? What was he from 3 tonight? He was 1 for 4. He was 1 for 4. And so, like, I thought I liked where he took some of those threes. Again, I guess you could say yes because they lost and we're discussing their offense. And he's someone that sure we want to see more threes from. But if he's not going to take more threes, dude, that kid can also take it to the rack pretty strong. And I think that's something else I would like to see from him, just being aggressive and going up against a big guy. I think sometimes he's not willing to take that physical contact, and he's smart. He understands what he can and cannot do when these arms are straight up and everything. But there's times where I'm like, go at him. Just go at the big guy and get to the free throw line and try and finish at the rim. Try something else out than just like relying on the floater and or the jump pass or a 3.
One play, I think one of my favorite plays of the game from him tonight, from Haliburton, was he had the pick and roll with Richaun Holmes. So Richaun Holmes is rolling. Haliburton, right? The defense is thinking, all right, there's two options here. Haliburton's either going to lob it to Holmes or he's going to float it up. Instead, it was a no-look drop-off to Barnes, who caught it and jammed it. Do you remember that? That was beautiful.
And you want to know why that all
great vision.
Great vision, but guess what? Barnes was moving without the basketball. That's what, again, I talk about this so much when guys relocate with the ball and you follow the ball. Standing here waiting for the basketball behind the arc for a three-point shot, you're not doing your teammates any good, like all the time, at least. Like even sometimes for Buddy, when he has a nice slash to the basket, you got to just like go hard. That's what Harrison Barnes did on that play, and his teammate found him. He got rewarded for making that explosive move to the basket.
Yeah, there's so many swing plays in the fourth quarter. The Kings were like making a run, and it was 92-89. Hield comes down and launches a three, misses it. Questionable three, but it's also Buddy. And it's like, well, he's made those two. So, like, do you get upset with it? I don't know. Like, whatever. But it's 92-89, and it's like, okay, are the Kings really going to, like, get back into this? They're starting to get hot from three. Misses the three. They come back, play some really good defense. They knock the ball into the backcourt. Luka's got to go get it, corral it, and he launches a three with the shot clock winding down from the logo, and it goes in.
That was a swing play.
And then they turn the ball over.
Oh, yeah.
Score by Finney Smith in transition. So a 3-point game turns into an 8-point game in like 15 seconds.
There was times right before that where like I was feeling like they still got this. Like that was that competitive feeling. I felt like it didn't feel like, oh, this will be lucky if they come back. It's like they were there, but then Dallas just did a good job with some of those daggers, but also the Kings played very much like the Kings, like they do late in games, and some of their decision-making turnovers. There was that turnover Buddy had. They were both kind of running down together, and Holmes was at the top of the key running, and Buddy just kind of threw it to him. It was a little bit behind him. Holmes could have been stronger with the ball and maybe got it. But also I think it's one of those things like understanding your personnel and understanding you don't need to give Holmes the ball way out here. Like let him slash a little bit more, don't be so quick. And just Buddy's timing is off a lot. So it's just not someone I trust having the ball late in the games too. And then
no, I'm with you. Like, I'm sorry, late in the games, like I give Haliburton, you have guys on the team who literally can handle. You've got 3 point guards pretty much with Fox, Haliburton, and Mitchell. Like, let's see those guys handle. Like, make those guys the decision makers. And honestly, Haliburton's probably the best decision maker out there on the team. Like, he is able to get guys in spots where they could succeed, whether it's his chemistry with Holmes, but he's just a gifted passer. He's able to create shots for others. I want to see him handle a lot, especially down the stretch of games. Mentioning the turnovers, like I feel like the turnovers haven't been a huge issue in terms of the volume of them. They had 13 today, which is like, that's fine. Like 13 turnovers. Yeah. The problem is Dallas scores 20 points off those turnovers. Yes. So that's the thing with turnovers. Like they don't hurt as much if the other team doesn't score, but when they score, it hurts a lot. 13 turnovers turned into 20 points. Meanwhile, Dallas had just 10 turnovers turned into 13 Kings points.
Yeah, and a few of those turnovers coming in at the end and then Hardaway Jr. going up for a jam. I felt like that happened like 3 different times late in that game. And you look at your transition D. You look at these mistakes that you're making. Like, is that fatigue? Is that mental fatigue you and I were speaking of the other night? What is that necessarily? And I just think sometimes you got to learn. You got to go through those growing pains and learn. And that's the other thing. Sometimes when we say that too, people are like, what? But they've been in the league for 10 years or 6 years or however long. Like, what do you mean they need to learn? It's different with each team that you get with. And especially when there's usually so much turnover, it's hard to grow on top of things. And that's why this year, I feel like is the year that the Kings actually have something that they had a little bit last year, can keep carrying and keep growing to go forward. So they're going to have these mistakes. It's how they bounce back from these mistakes. And also, yes, how do they learn from these mistakes going forward?
I felt like Luka really got off to a nice start early. Harkless struggled with him. He was fouling him a lot. He tried to make, and look, Luka's a difficult cover, no doubt about it. And Luka's been one of those guys that's been off to a slow start when it comes to the shooting numbers. He finished today with 23 points. He had 10 assists. He had 8 rebounds, only 3 turnovers. He was 1 of 7 from 3 and 2 of 6 from the free throw line, finishing 10 for 21 overall. Someone in the chat was bringing this up. I'm curious. Do you think that Walton should have, and I don't know if this is ridiculous, okay, do you think Walton should have maybe thrown Mitchell on him earlier? And I know, like, look, Mitchell, as good as he is defensively and he can make life hard, I don't know that it's ideal to have your 6 foot, 6 1/4, whatever you want to call him, point guard defending Luka a lot, but do you think he should have seen him more?
Well, this is where I'll go with that, because you saw when Davion was on Luka, Luka started doing some smart plays where he's like, all right, I'm going to body you up. Like, I have the size advantage. Let's go. I'm going to get you down in the paint, which maybe creates a double team. And then Luka creates off of that, not the right rotations. I understand that. But Davion Mitchell, he's a disruptor. And the way that he got into Luka's head, and Luka's like at the ref, like, oh, he touched my arm, but he touched my arm. That's what he sounds like when he's on the floor. Sure.
Hey, he's Luka's damn. Obviously, we know Luka's just a stud, right?
So good.
So vision, all that stuff. And by the way, anytime I already got this from someone, my guy SMC Hoops, who loves to jump on me if I say anything about Luka. Luka's great. Yes, he was there at number 2 for the Kings. Yes, all that stuff is accurate. We know this. I can acknowledge he's a stud, but also acknowledge he's so difficult at times to watch, because as great as he is, I'm not sure I've ever seen a player complain as much as him. And you start thinking about like some of the big complainers. We saw one in Sacramento for 8 years. Cousins was up there.
Yeah.
Everything. Chris Paul has been notorious over the years as one of the biggest floppers and complainers out there. Yeah. But my God, Luka's up there, man. And it's just nonstop with him.
It is. And I'm glad he got a tech, right? He got that
he
tech.
Did.
Yeah. And I'm glad that, they'll throw him that tech and be like, no, you're not going to do this 24/7. We're not going to cry about everything that we want really to happen. I understand when he gets mad. And I think it was even funny when Luke got so pissed about a play, or it called a timeout, and then he comes out to the ref and Luka's like, team up. Hey.
I
and
saw
like,
that.
Really, I'm thinking, you asshole, but at the same time, it is funny, right? But the complaining part, when it's still in game, there was another time where the Kings were in transition. They passed it up to Buddy. He tried fouling Buddy before the shot, and then Buddy shoots the 3, but before Buddy shoots the 3, Luka's like, I found him. And then Buddy misses the shot. So then he just like, okay, let's keep going. And it's just so, like, I was watching that whole thing just laughing, like, you are so annoying and so good at basketball that it's just such a weird combination. But yes, at the end of the day, he's still going to complain. I think he's gotten better. He can keep getting better and better, because he doesn't need to do that. He doesn't need to be that guy that needs to be so vocal in that way, because he's going to get his calls.
All right, of course, our first thoughts presented by our friends over at Guaranteed Rate and rate.com/Sean Stanfield. Look, if you are looking to purchase a house or refinance your house, there is literally no person better that can help you through that process of loans and refinancing than Sean Stanfield and his team over at Guaranteed Rate. You should give him a call today at 916-276-7563. He's a huge Kings fan, so he's probably really depressed right now. But my point is, he can walk you through everything. And he does it, to me, in such like an efficient way. Morgan, you saw one of the videos. He had an example he sends out to people who reach out to him. Like,
Yes.
hey, I'm interested in refinancing. Here's my situation. Does it make sense for me? He's not going to send you an email with a whole bunch of like documents that you don't understand.
Yes.
He's literally going to walk you through the process and go, oh, okay, this makes sense for me, or it doesn't. But I'm telling you, he's a great resource to help out. So you need to visit his website, rate.com/Sean Stanfield. Connect with Sean and his team. Equal housing lender, subject to credit approval. NMLS ID number 349707. Company NMLS ID number 2611. NMLSconsumeraccess.org. Thanks so much to our friends at
Guaranteed.
Rate.
Guaranteed.
Right.
I love with you somewhere else, there is a slight delay on that, and it makes me laugh every time.
That is so funny. And there was a point where you paused where I was like, I wanted to talk so much good things about Sean. I think you left it for me, but I was like, I can't tell.
It's
Hey,
okay.
we're on remote. We're getting it, and I love this vibe either way. I love that I have like a dope ass set behind me while I get to do this too. Not to say that the Do Some Mo podcast set isn't just as good as this. A little cheaper, but just as good.
Okay. I
Is
like
it?
mine better.
Okay, it's all.
So Morgan, any other thoughts from this one? Any other individuals or plays or sequences or anything else that stood out to you before we look ahead to the Kings' next opponent?
No, I think we pretty much went over it. The energy, again, if we just really quick wanted to say anything about Harrison Barnes, it's just that solid play from him. Still a double-double, the 10 boards, 15 points, and
One
you
of
can
8 from 3, Morgan.
one of 8 from 3. But you're gonna have some bad shooting days too, and
I
that's
know.
the same thing that we say for some of these guys. Sure, you couldn't depend on him from beyond the arc, but there was other categories that Barnes was still doing things. 3 steals, like being handsy on defense, doing what he needed to do there. It's your shots aren't going to always fall. I'm not going to say that each and every night if that's something that's consistent for the Kings, like, oh, their shots will fall someday. No, this was one of those bad shooting nights, and they just got to pick it up Tuesday against the Utah Jazz.
Yeah, that's the Kings' next opponent, the Utah Jazz team that they played well recently, right? That was a pretty fun game between those two, and Utah coming off a tough loss last night in Chicago to the Bulls. They're at home. They play really well at home. It's going to be a tough challenge. And like, as always say, literally almost every night in the NBA, like these are tough games, and there's more parity than ever in this league. If you're going to beat Utah on the road, number one, you need a big night from Fox. And I'm still waiting for it. I'm waiting for this like coming out party. Can he come out and have a big night? You need a big night from Fox. And I think I mentioned this on D-Lo and KC last week, Morgan.
What?
If he isn't 100%, okay? Let's just say he is. And to be clear, he's not on the injury report at all. So this is just pure me pulling something out of my ass, searching for reasons as to why he could be struggling. If he is nicked up, this is 82 games. Is it worth it to sit him for 2 games, right? Like, is it worth it just to be like, yes, this may hurt us, right? But what's going to hurt us if he's dealing with something and it lingers all year? Would it make sense to position it where you can give him a game or 2 off, and then all of a sudden it turns into 4 or 5 days off and see how he feels?
Stop.
That's all I'm saying. Okay.
You're speculating, and it's not a thing. It's not a thing. And if it becomes a thing, it's something we can talk about. And if he doesn't look like it either. So that's why it's not a thing. And no, that's not an option. That's not a thing. No, I've not personally talked to De'Aaron Fox and been like, hey, are you banged up? But like, it's basketball. It's physical. It's not on the injury report. He's not hurt enough. He's good enough to go. No, not a thing. You're pulling it out of your ass. Leave it in there.
Okay, but just to be clear, when we asked Luke Walton last week about this, he kind of brushed it aside, but said, yeah, everyone's kind of banged up once the season starts. I'm just saying, like, okay, that's fine.
That's exactly what he's saying. It's a physical game. Like, everyone gets those new little injuries or, those little things like, oh, I stubbed my finger and like have to tape it. Just like little things like that happen as well.
Okay, I'm sorry for asking. Meanwhile, I mentioned the Jazz. They lost to the Bulls last night. They're playing right now against the Milwaukee Bucks on a back-to-back. So they will be taking on the Kings coming up on Tuesday. Then Sacramento plays the very next night on a back-to-back, a rematch against the Pelicans. And then they welcome in the Hornets after that. Another Ball and the Hornets.
That'll be fun on a Friday night. That'll be cool.
Yes. All right. Well, the Kings, they're at 500, 3-3 on the year. They lose to the Dallas Mavericks, 105-99. Those are our first thoughts.